Good morning and welcome back to episode 12 of the Union Podcast. I'm here with my good sister, Carrie Rodriguez. How you doing, Carrie?
I'm doing fabulous. I missed you last week. I'm so glad we are back in the mix this week.
Yeah, I'm so glad too. So we should start calling it the reunion. Because we sort of, you've been traveling, I've been traveling, um, doing the great work. But, it's always good to be back in the saddle, talking about education, news, politics, policy, advocacy, and how we do this from particularly a parent and educator point of view. But today's extra special because we have a special guest. And we talked about this story coming out of San Antonio in the past, and it's always a pleasure to sort of bring the story that we highlight to you on the show to life, and to hear from the very folks who are living this work and fighting for education for their children. And so, without further ado, I'm going to throw it over to you, Carrie, to introduce our guest. I'm looking forward to this conversation. I'll jump in where I can, but please tell us who we have today and how this person has made history in ensuring that children have equitable education in this country.
Well, I am so excited to introduce everyone to my dear friend, Maribel Garcia, who is from San Antonio, Texas. Most important job that she has is being an extraordinary mama. And we're going to get into that and what brought her to this work. But she is also the executive director of Mindshift Ed Parent Institute, and is literally one of the fiercest voices, not just in Texas, but across the country. And she is my comadre. And anytime that I need to roll up, whether it is in New York City, if it's in Washington, D.C., if I've got a tough fight, this is my go-to. This is my day one team that I go to. And so, Maribel, I am so honored that you are with us today. And as I shared before we hopped on here, you are just bringing beauty and light everywhere you go, even to our podcast today. So thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thank you, guys. Carrie, I appreciate you having me over, Curtis. Thank you for the welcoming space. Yeah, I am who I am, and I've realized as I get older, right, we just have to live in our skin and be proud of who we are. And there's not a lot of color out there, so we got to bring the color and the vibe, especially when it comes to fighting for our kids. So happy to be here, happy to answer any questions, and just be a great part of this podcast. Thank you.
Maribel, I think it's so important that people like understand how we come to this work before we get into the work. Because there's a lot to talk to and talk about when it comes to this moment in education and in politics, especially in some of the communities that we represent. And boy, have you been through it the last couple of weeks. But before we get into the drama, I want folks to understand your heart and what has brought you to this work. Could you share a little bit about, how you founded your organization and what actually brings you to the work? Because I think it's something that is pretty special.
Well, thank you. I definitely want to share. So I'm a mom first, as always, and as we always say, mom of two boys. I have a 16-year-old and a 14-year-old. My 14, Guzeki, he has multiple disabilities. He has cerebral palsy, physically handicapped, recently diagnosed with Crohn's. He's got quadriplegia. I mean, you name it, G-tube fed, nonverbal. The list goes on and on. And really, I became a special needs mom with him. And that on its own is just challenging, right? It's a really scary moment when you start a life or you start developing a life that you didn't imagine or that you hoped something different for. And so it's just navigating challenge after challenge, not only acceptance, right, but even within your own family sometimes to understand the things that you have to go through on a day to day and not feeling excluded or anytime we would go out, when somebody's pointing at us or, talking about us, right? There's a lot that goes into being a special needs parent, especially when your child looks different than everybody else and acts different than other kids and can't do the same things. And so, really, my life changed as all parents' lives change when their kids are born, except ours took a little bit of a different toll, lots more valleys, and peaks and highs and lows and all the things that come with it. But really, where I started to understand the importance of advocacy was when we started our school journey. When he turned 3 years old and that bus came to pick him up, and I felt like I was just starting to understand him and understand his needs. Then I had to let him go to a stranger in the school system that didn't know anything about him. And so that's when I realized, wait, hold on. How do we become partners in this education journey? And really started to see that there really wasn't a partnership. It really depended on who you got, right? If you were lucky if you had a great teacher. I was very lucky in the beginning, but haven't been as lucky since, right? So I used kind of a hit or miss. And that's why I became super integrated into the school system and the school journey.
And being the mother of a child with special needs, like you automatically have to become an advocate. It's I mean, so many of us who are in this work as parent activists literally come from that space. And unfortunately, you have to become a warrior, because you have to be able to stand up and advocate, because the system is not necessarily geared towards opening doors for you or telling you what's available or doing what's right for your kid. You actually have to go in there and advocate, which is just so critically important. But through that work and through your own advocacy for your son, and you also have another son who's absolutely extraordinary. And we actually got to spend some time. He was in Washington, D.C. with us, actually advocating against the big, beautiful bill. I brought my son with me. You had your son with you, and watching our children stand up and use their voices. What a beautiful moment. So like, it says something when you see the fruit of the motherhood here, and you see how they stand up and advocate. Like, you are one extraordinary mama in my book. But, through that work, and through learning that advocacy, obviously, we meet other moms who also learn the way of having to advocate and stand up. And in recent weeks, through that advocacy and teaching other parents, like, you have had to literally help to organize other moms to stand up and fight when they have deep concerns, especially around what the data is telling us around outcomes for kids. And that brings us kind of to the situation that we went through in Edgewood, right? Where you had been working with moms who had asked you to help them to organize because of what they were seeing right in front of them. Like, their kids were being bullied, the academic outcomes were poor, and a district that just wasn't listening to parents and wasn't being responsive, not being inclusive, all of these different things. And this led you to standing with them and standing up to fight. And then, unfortunately, like, tell us what happened next in the story as you're spreading your knowledge and helping other parents to advocate for their kids, doing the right things, data driven, saying, here's the information, like, we want better. What happens next, girl?
Yeah. Well, hopefully nobody knows, but yes, everybody knows, right? First, shout out to Budokai. So thank you for mentioning that. I know he's going to watch this, and I love him to death. So he's my other son. But yeah, parents came up to the organization. They're having issues with IEPs, 504s, being heard, policing in schools, bullying, not only student to student, but teachers to students, staff members to parents. I mean, the list is insane. And it just started developing even more, even after the incident. So on August 19th, parents showed up prepared, because as we all want parents to come, not just to complain, not to come and say the issues, because the issues exist, but prepared with a solution, prepared with a resolution, prepared with a petition. I was coming in to present that to the board and just say, "Hey, these are the parents. I'm really have nothing to do with this. It's them." And I think that's where everything kind of flipped, right? I started speaking in Spanish intentionally. Our area is high Hispanic, Spanish speaking Latinos. And so even in this board meeting, they say the pledge in Spanish, which is not common here in San Antonio. And so I started in Spanish. I thought the process was a certain way. Process is 2 minutes, and then a bell rings, and then the other 2 minutes for translation. That never went off. So I kept reading, and I just felt like I was sabotaged. So I was like, no, I have to say this, especially when the board members don't speak Spanish. How is my message going to get across if I started in Spanish, didn't really finish my English? So I felt like that was the whole purpose, right? So I was like, no, I'm going to keep talking while you can hear me. And they cut off my mic. I felt that's fine, whatever. I'm still going to read it. I'll read it all the way out. I'm going to walk out, right?
This has happened to me, girl. Like, I have gone to school board meetings across this country. You know, when I'm called in by parents, will you come to us to this Minneapolis board meeting? Will you come to it with us in San Diego? I on top of my own. So like sometimes you go over a little bit. Sometimes they get a little feisty and say, hey, that's enough. Wrap it up. Like get off. Like they give you the little hook. But that's not what happened in your you didn't get the side eye, you didn't get the talk down like Maribel, that's enough. This was next level what happened in your situation.
Well, and next level, and you know, it wasn't the same treatment across the board. There was 3 or 4 other parents that went before me that went over time. And we have video, they have video. For some reason, which I know why, right? I mean, we had presented these items ahead of time. They knew I was coming. They knew who I was. They had met with me before. It was very intentional. It was intentional, and to cause intimidation, to cause a scene, to cause as an example, whatever it was, I don't know. But as soon as that happened, 3, 4 officers come down, and I'm like, well, let's just whatever, walk out, and I'm walking out peacefully to the doors, exiting the building. And then I just remember turning back and being like, the chief of police is like, actually, we're going to arrest her because she is trespassing. And I'm like, I'm sorry. And I see the videos now, and I don't remember. My first reaction is, show me the policy, right? Like, show me where it says this. Like, this is a lie, right? Like, I mean, of course I got upset. I was walking out. So I just didn't understand at what point was this a cause for arrest? Not only just to, you know, say it, but like to put me against a wall and arrest me. And, you know, and honestly, they left marks on my arm. It was just an unnecessary use of power, abuse of power and force. And so for what? I just
it wasn't a civil trespass, girl. It was a criminal trespass. Yes. We are talking about like literally throwing you up against a wall, dragging you through a parking lot, slamming you into the back of a cruiser, like not indicating why you were being detained. Like we're talking about like, and just to be clear, like I didn't hear any cussing. I've watched the video 800 times now. No cussing, no threats. Because I've also been at some meetings with, just putting it out there, the Moms for Liberty folks that throw down like threats, like really like, I'm going to come get like throw down. None of that occurred here. You weren't threatening them. You weren't saying, I'm going to come get you. I'm coming to your house. Like none of that, literally just going over time. And so you get thrown in the back of this cop car and then like, they don't let you go.
Well, here I'm thinking, right? Okay, like I'll get a warning or I'll get a writing, something, right? They'll maybe, you know, slap in the arm. I mean, it wasn't anything that was a cause for this kind of severity, right? No, much to my surprise, 3 hours later, being in a cell at that police district, because here in Texas, don't know how it is across the nation. They have their own police department, so they police themselves. Very interesting. They're the ones who can say what you did. They're also the judge and the investigators. It's very, I don't know. We can talk about that later. But 3 hours later in the cell, and I'm thinking I'm signing out to leave. I'm worried, of course, because I had taken people in my car, my keys, my purse, everything was there. So I sign thinking I'm going home, and I'm signing to go into Bexar County Jail. This is a legit, not just holding you in a cell. This is shackles in my feet for 12 hours. Undressing, being like literally strip search, right? I mean, the TB test, I got a pregnancy test. I mean, it was just beyond. I think when I was there, honestly, I was out of body experience, just like analyzing, like, what is this? And also thinking, and I think I'd leave this with the audience, because I think the audience can relate, is this what our kids have to face? Because this started at the school level, right? This is what happens to kids when they go to juvenile. No parents are called. Nobody was able to get information about where I was. My husband was threatened with being arrested himself for finding out, for knocking on the door at the police department. I mean, it's beyond me on why it had to lead to that kind of trauma and extent. And that just hurts me to think that all these kids that have gone through those, because I'm in the cell and I see markings from kids on the windows. And I'm thinking, how many kids have been ahead of me? This is a culture that has happened in this specific district, and how many are actually happening across our nation.
Yeah, I mean, as I'm listening to this, and the humiliation, I just can't imagine. But I'm also seeing it through the eyes of those who are watching, and also through social media, and the idea that they're trying to create an environment of fear,
Yeah.
not just for you, but anyone who's watching, to say this, let this be an example to you, to those who sort of step outside of the boxes that we think that you should be in, or spaces that you deserve to exert your voice and influence. And that is the biggest takeaway, is like the environment that we're creating in this country,
Mhm.
that only certain people have the right to fight for themselves and for their children. And if you step outside, we're
Mhm.
going to humiliate you, and do it rather publicly, as an example to those who are watching, and say, if you want to try this, this is
Mhm.
coming to you too. And so we appreciate and honor your courage to sort of not just sort of, unfortunately live through that, but to come back and say, you have not broken me. I stand on 2 feet on behalf of myself, my family, my children, to say that I'm back. And that is the ultimate sort of response to that. It's not to sort of, and I understand people who are like, who've been impacted by this, say, I need to rest, and that's important. At the same time, that for you to come back, that's the response that they don't want to see, and that you have to have. So we appreciate you.
This girl did not rest. The minute she walked out of the jail, let me tell you something.
Oh, she could have though.
The
If
minute
you
she
said
walked out of the jail, the
anything,
video was right there, and she didn't have
Terry,
to get ready. She was ready.
well,
The
that's
girl
that's
was
why
ready.
that's why the movement is women, because the brothers would have been like, I just need a day. Can I have a day just to? And you all like, no, we
And
not.
there ain't no rest. No, well, you know what? I mean, and I tell my kids, and I'm like, yeah, I made friends in jail. Of course I did, because we're organizers, right? So I'm talking to all the ladies, and they're like, you should do this, and you should be quiet, or no, you should say this. And I love the energy, because even in there, they were like, why are you even here? First of all, thank you for doing the fight and fighting for our kids, right? So I thought it was an amazing experience, that I actually connected and was able to create some friendships there as well. But it doesn't rest. I heard something, I want to quote someone. They said, men go to battle, women go to war. And I love that. And I was like, yes, amen. It is true, right? Yes, we are all fighters, but moms have a different kind of, I don't know what is in our energy and our vibe. We're going to defend our kids, and not only our kids, the entire kids that exist, the future of America, right? That we hold that really heavy in our hearts, on our shoulders. And it just, there is no time for rest. My dad always says, I'll rest when I'm underground. And I take that to heart, and quoting my dad, because he's like, we got so much work to do and so little time. And in the meantime that all this stuff is happening that's wrong, our kids are still suffering, right? Our kids are still going through these systems. They're being conditioned in this way. Our parents are thinking this is okay. And I think what you said, Curtis, I want to elevate that and say, I don't want everybody to be fearful. This fight is not over, right? They wanted to bring this to a public level. We will definitely elevate to the same level and say, well, this is what you're doing with data and facts. And something's got to give. And let me tell you, parent force is nothing to be reckoned with. They're going to keep coming. And I only serve the community that wants to do this work. And all of that is the parents, and attributing the parents to Edgewood ISD that are ready, that keep continuously fighting. This is an exhausting battle that we all live every day. Carrie, I know you do it all the time. Um, we are always on guard, right? We're ready for the fight. These parents also have taken that on, and anytime they say, we're going to do, I'm just here to support you all. And I think that they try to make an example, but everybody's watching. And I think this, as long as we all stand together and say, you know what, this is not going to be the way that it is, this will never happen again. And that's really where we want to get to.
Curtis, you know what gets me so confused about this, and maybe you can help me and Maribel to understand. Like, often, like all the time, we are told as parents and families, like, you need to be a part of the process. We need your voice. Your perspective is so important. Hold us accountable. We want to be in relationship with you. And then when we need to have a hard conversation because we're not liking what we see, this is how we get treated, because what Medibel is going through is not unlike what we have seen in communities across this country. And I'll tell you, when this happened to Medibel, she had an army of other leaders from across it. My phone was blowing up like, when are we catching flights? We're going down, like we're going to have her back, because they have seen this themselves in their own community. And parents are tired. We are dog tired of being treated like this. And being told, no, you're so important. We need you. Like, help me understand this, Curtis, because I don't get it.
That's incredibly important. So I don't know very about. I was on my school board for 10 years here in Maryland and had sat through many a meeting. I'll tell you this: school board members do not come to these meetings blind. They know who's speaking. They have a pretty good idea what you're saying. When your mic was cut off, that was not sort of that takes time in order to get someone to them. I mean, that thing takes time. And so they knew you were coming. But this is also why you need parents on school boards. I will tell you, when I first joined the school board, I was the only member of the school board who had a child in the school system. Let me say that again. There were 13 of us. 13. And I was literally chosen because I had 2 children in the system and a wife who worked for the system. And so when you come to these spaces, you definitely come with a level of empathy that some just don't. And people who are running for office, they have an agenda, they have supporters, they have sort of a longer term sort of product. And so it's oftentimes parent complaints are inconvenient. And it's unfortunate because you're talking about children and really pushing back on what you say you stand for. And so, yeah, this is, I'm surprised, but I'm not surprised, sadly, that this is happening. Especially when you have people whose agendas are not in line with what they say it is, especially when they're going asking for votes every so many years. So again, this is why it's important, and this is why this show is important. And so I'm curious, what's next for your organization, Mindshift Ed, and how can people who are watching us get involved and help you?
Yeah, well, the fight is still going on, right? We haven't gotten what we wanted. Parents want that resolution adopted. The parents put so much effort and time and thought into what they needed and the solutions that they want. So they want that process as quick as they were able to create a resolution to sanction a board member when he spoke up on our behalf. The same quickness, right? The swiftness as possible. So parents are doing that. Support them still, right? So if you see stuff on social media, make sure you amplify it. I tell people all the time because they're like, how can I can't, I'm not there. You can use your voice. You can make a video. You can share our posts. You can make a comment, even if you just like that. That really amplifies across the nation, to be quite honest with you. And to shout out to all the my peeps in the nation, because Carrie, thank you. You're right. Everybody really came together at that moment and showed support for the families here, for myself after that arrest.
And I'm going to say it. You can also make a donation. You can go to Mindshift Ed and you can make a donation. And you can support a parent that is going through the Parent Institute. You can support a cafecito, whatever you need to do. Like, this is the moment. Like, you might be sitting right now in Philadelphia or in Baltimore or in Detroit or wherever you are. You can help in a meaningful way. Give them $25, give them $50. You can do it. And that's going to make a difference for these parents.
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate that. I mean, we are building an army of parents. I've said it many times since I started this work, right? It takes a lot of grit to be a parent, to stand up and not be fearful of all the consequences that currently are happening. And so, yeah, support our work. We can build that leadership. We can build the leadership across not only San Antonio, across Texas, across the nation. Same work that Carrie's doing here across supporting and elevating our voices, right? So, yes, please donate if you have it in your heart to do so. Our organization relies on donations. We're a nonprofit, right? We're looking for money all the time to support this kind of work. And so if you do, and you're strong believers that parents should be leading communities, leading schools, really being a part of that table that makes decisions for our kids, really support our work so that it can continue to grow and we can really have schools that our kids deserve and not the mediocre schools that we currently have.
No, thank you so much for joining us today. It's really, again, as I mentioned before, to bring the stories that we report on to life is what the Union Podcast is all about. And so thank you so much for joining us. This show again is talking about what's happening around the country, news, research. And so just this week, some news out of Florida that I've been tracking, Carrie, particularly as it relates to the state board in Florida, just passed a law that allows public charter schools to collate into traditional public school buildings. A lot of you who send your children to public charter schools around the country understand one of the largest costs of running a charter school is the building, facilities, but also all the other pieces that come with it. And so those who started schools and maybe not have been successful, it's a lot of it had to do with the space. And so this new law that was passed by the state board allows schools, and not long ago, Florida passed something called Schools of Hope, which were this idea of how do you ensure that students have a quality public education. And so this allows schools to co-locate. At the same time, these schools can also share in other sort of supports that happen in that public school building. And that includes custodial work, maintenance, school safety, food services, nursing, and even student transportation, another huge cost. And so I know there's a lot going on in Florida, but something that other states should look at, and how you particularly have a lot of space, a lot of public schools. You're seeing, we talked about this in the last couple of shows, Carrie, enrollment in public schools is down in a lot of ways. And that also means that there's space in the building, underused space. And so if there's an opportunity for public charter schools to really offer those opportunities, something that I think Florida is doing and others should pay attention to.
Yeah, and that's why the National Parents Union, we have been crafting a piece of federal legislation we call the Access Act that addresses a lot of these issues and creates a whole new bucket of money for charter schools and other public school options to access, to make sure that they have access to facilities, that they have access to transportation. Like, listen, I know that both of you probably have had the same experience as I have. I've seen a charter school open up above a CVS in a couple of rooms. Okay. And the outcomes that come out of those couple of rooms above the CVS or above the pizza place will blow away that brand new $300 million facility that they just opened up down the street, because of the quality of what is going on with teachers and kids and the climate that is created within those couple of rooms. Now, imagine where we could get to if those kids had science labs, had access to art studios and everything else that any other kid that attends a public traditional school gets. Just because you choose an alternative public option does not mean that you should be ostracized and get less than. That doesn't make sense. They should have access to transportation so that they can actually make a choice worth choosing and have that facilitated, because they are part of the public system. So to me, it makes sense. Like what's happening in charter schools, delivering meaningful, measurable results for kids. Like, we need to make that happen at scale and make it easier for those schools to grow and thrive, not harder.
No, go ahead, Maribel. You want to say something?
Yeah, I want to add, like, I support charter schools and any choices that parents can have. I think if we talk about really giving parents a wide lens and a wide opportunity, that is an option. Now, to diminish that option, it makes it even more difficult for families to exercise their choice, right? Transportation is really big across the board. Even if a family in the situation like we're having here in Edgewood that wants to move from this situation, do they really have access even though it exists, right? They don't have a car. They would have to take a bus. I mean, even if we could get the city to give free via transportation bus rides to our kids, I mean, someone's got to give. But the reality is that even though you have choice, it's not always accessible to all families.
And I hate how they talk about it like, oh, we're not going to help those kids. Like, yeah, I've even heard elected officials say that. Those kids, like, you represent those kids. Those are our kids. Like, these are all our kids. Like, I think that's real weird. Real weird.
And I mentioned before, I mean, this has a ripple effect across parents who see what's happening, and it affects their choices.
Mm-hmm.
If I can't get my child to that school, or if they don't have school safety and all the things that I think this particular law is going to enhance, then you create sort of a false choice. And so we don't want that to happen. We're almost done, but there's one more thing that I'm tracking, which is research that came out of Georgetown University this week. And it should be an eye opener for a lot of us. I know a lot of us are pushing this idea of of non-college pathways, and not everybody's going to college. We understand that. But this new research came out of Georgetown this week says that the U.S. will need over 5 million additional, that's the key word, additional workers who have at least some post-secondary education by 2032. Of that total, 4.5 million will need to have at least a bachelor's degree, according to the report. And this degree requiring positions are facing this critical skills shortages. They include nurses, teachers, and engineers. And teachers will have a shortfall of about 600,000 by 2032. This is sort of, if we keep going on the same path, we'll need an additional 600,000 teachers by 2032, because if we don't have people like children like ours who are going to college, getting degrees, and becoming, in this country, you still got to go to college to be a school teacher. I'm for all the professions, but for the educators that are going to be in these classrooms, we need them going to post-secondary. And so this idea that, we need additional is something that I think we all need to keep in mind. Why is this number so high? Because we have this spurring and retirements that are really outpacing similarly qualified workers into the workforce. And so there are also these new jobs that are being created that are creating competition for nurses and engineers and teachers. And so this is something we're going to be reporting on in future weeks, Carrie, because we need to find out, where is our country going to go if children aren't going to college, particularly boys and boys of color that I really fight for. If they're not going to college, these school teachers, then what is teaching going to look like by 2032?
And we have some ideas. Parents want to be part of the solution. And in the next couple of weeks, the National Parents Union, we're going to be releasing a report on some ideas in terms of how we can increase the number of people entering into the teaching profession by making sure we have a mandatory minimum salary of $80,000. We have a plan. We've got some ideas. We're about to spice it up. So can't wait to tell you about that.
Well, tune into that show, because we're going to bring that here first. You'll be the first one to hear about that research data and that survey data. So tune into the next episode, the future episodes of the Union. We're going to wrap up. Maribel, thank you so much for joining us. We value your work. We want to support the work that you're doing. We appreciate you fighting for parents, but also being an example of what happens when you fight back. Any final words, Carrie?
Now, I'm just so grateful for Maribel and, just her friendship, her leadership. It's an inspiration to all of us. And so keep going, girl. Keep going.
Thank you.
Maribel, any final words? Give us some inspiration before we get out of here.
You all, we wake up to have a purpose in life. We have to walk through our why. Do not stop. We have to fight for justice, no matter what that looks like for you. So my last words are: stand up, fight, and don't give up.
On that note, perfect way to drop the mic for us. We appreciate you. Thank you all for joining the episode of the Union Podcast. Please like, share, respond, share this with your folks. We're here every Friday giving you the latest news, advocacy, politics, policy, and education from a parent and educator perspective. Thank you all for joining us. See you.